Baruch Hashem that men don't like dress scandalously, like just culturally, socially. Like I can't even, it's like, it actually just makes me like giggle thinking about what like a scandalous male outfit would look like. Not to put like crazy impure thoughts in your head or anything, but
this is a song about it.
Whoa, yeah, swear to God I'm with it. I don't see nobody in my lane that's quite go get it like me. Whoa, please don't be wasting my time with that business. Who you kidding, man? Yeah. Whoa, yeah, swear to God I'm with it. I don't see nobody in my lane that's quite go get it like me. Whoa. Please don't be wasting my time.
Shalom Aleichem, this is Meorah, and today I want to talk about Tzniut. So what is Tzniut, or Tznius if you're of the Ashkenazic persuasion? You guys might have heard of this, but it's commonly described as the Jewish laws of modesty, or kind of like a code of conduct around dress, speech, and behavior. And so why do we care about these things? What's the deal with Tzniut? Why does it matter to us? And of course, it is also halacha. So the reason that it matters is because we want to remind ourselves that we are sons and daughters of Hashem, and yes, Tzniut does apply to men as well, which we'll get into. But yeah, we're sons and daughters of Hashem, so we want to walk around with dignity, and it's just this idea that Am Yisrael should be walking with dignity and confidence, and just being a beautiful people out and about in the world, just kind of carrying ourselves properly. So I want to focus on dress for this video because it's something I've actually been learning more about and something I've been trying to take on, but I did want to touch on some of the other areas of Tzniut observance, and just to kind of give you guys a sense of what it means when we have proper speech and behavior. One of the sort of big obvious ones is literally how you speak. Not swearing, not being crass, and just kind of, comporting yourself, again, with this idea of dignity in mind. Now, swearing is just kind of, on a little side note, I personally actually think that swearing in the right given context is a beautiful thing. I think it's sort of the linguist in me that just really appreciates swearing to an extent. When it's sort of used for pure emoting, I think it's actually a beautiful thing. But when you use a swear word to sort of say something bad to another person, that's where I say no, and that's kind of when you take this like beautiful thing of emoting and turn it into a curse, right? Like a curse word. So that's where I personally draw the line, but certainly more observant folks will refrain altogether from any sort of negative speech, which they consider any kind of swearing to be part of. So that's one sort of major aspect, especially when it comes to speech, of observing Tzniut, or these laws of modesty. But another one that some people may or may not know is this idea of singing. So if you guys have ever been around a more like frum, a more orthodox, observant arena, again, depending on sort of how observant you are, singing is actually kind of a no-no when it comes to women singing in the presence of men. So it's this idea that men can't hear kol isha, or a woman's voice, because they really kind of attribute this to like a nakedness or erva of a woman. And so this is one of the areas where I personally struggle with. Like, I like to sing with men. I like to, be kind of part of, all the festivities on like a, like Kabbalat Shabbat service and things like that. So it's certainly somewhere I sort of draw that difference between my level of observance. But it definitely is one of the aspects of Tzniut that sort of comes into play when you kind of look at like Haredi and Hasidic communities and certain sects of Judaism. So that's where that comes from. And then another area, now this is a little bit more in terms of behavior, I'll give you a couple more of these. One of them is this idea of touch. So if you guys have ever heard the term shomer negia, sort of reminds you of shomer Shabbat or shomer Shabbos. If you've ever heard of that term, it means, shomer negia means you're observing the rules of not touching people of the opposite gender. So again, depending sort of on where on the spectrum you fall, you might be modern Orthodox, and maybe like a business handshake is totally appropriate and fine and something that you do. But again, as you go a little bit more into the observant side of things, shomer negia means you're really not touching like at all, like including a handshake, somebody of the opposite sex. Now again, like literally each of these different aspects of tzniut could be like a video on its own, so I'm not going to go into all those because today we're talking clothing, which is why we're here in my closet. But I just again want to give you guys a few touches of different aspects of tzniut observance aside from dress. And another one in terms of behavior is yichud. So this is the idea of seclusion, again, between men and women. So you kind of get the idea, like there's a theme here between the idea of modesty and tzniut. Definitely has a lot to do with sort of being mindful of and respectful of the opposite gender and kind of boundaries and distances as well. So yichud literally is a distancing thing. It's about seclusion, and you really see it coming into play, namely in like, kind of like two different areas, of course, in shul, so in synagogue, depending on, maybe you guys have been to an Orthodox synagogue and have seen a mechitza, or a wall that's like a literal divider. Often it's just kind of like, you know, kind of like those like bamboo screens or like those wooden like wall room divider kind of things. So sometimes they'll be made of those. Sometimes the mechitza is like a permanent wall structure that's actually in the center of the sanctuary. And oftentimes mechitza, it's actually that a lot of sort of synagogues are structured so that the women sit in sort of the back of the auditorium, if you will, so they're again secluded in a distance from the men. So this is a very common way that you see yichud playing out, and this is actually tied to this idea of tzniut. So maybe you've actually observed tzniut and not even known it by being in an Orthodox shul. Another area that I actually find very interesting, because I've never been to like a Hasidic or Meorah or like a frum wedding before, but I've actually seen like a few different like documentaries about like frum marriage and things like that online. And I've noticed that another way that yichud plays out is when there's like weddings and men and women are at the same wedding, of course, but there will also be a mechitza where the men and women are dancing and celebrating, like literally segregated. So this is another way that you may have noticed or heard about yichud actually playing out in the Jewish community. So these are different aspects of tzniut. Again, we're going to talk about clothing today because it's something I'm trying to sort of take on and learn to appreciate a little bit more. And these are sort of the three, I wanted to mention these because these are areas that I find personally a little bit sticky. I'm just not quite there yet. I don't ever like to say like, oh, I don't believe in that, or that's not what I believe in. I think that's just kind of like a negative thing to say. I prefer to sort of explain it that I'm not yet mature enough to appreciate, you know, where these sort of levels of observance come from. So it may very well be that someday, you know, God willing, that I will sort of be at that point where I can appreciate, admire all of the sort of richness of these levels of observance, but I'm not quite there yet. I think that probably the singing one is just kind of sad. You know, I like to sing and congregate and that kind of stuff. Touch, I could deal with that, you know, aside from like a business handshake, I could be fine with that. It's really yichud that I have a struggle with because I really do like to commingle with members of the opposite gender, and I think there's something really enriching in my personal life of, you know, sharing ideas with you know, men and women, and that's something I still have yet to sort of grow into appreciating, as we'll say. So anyway, aside from that, why am I talking about tzniut? So like, why does it sort of matter? Again, it's this idea that you're, you know, walking with dignity, and it's literally how you represent yourself when it comes to your clothing and your dress. You're walking around in this world, you know, I mean, all of us think about this, you know, aside from tzniut, whether you're Jewish or not, it's something we all think about. It's how we represent ourselves in the world, what you want your clothing to say about you, and there's just a lot of power in that. It's about sort of who you are in the world. And then at the same time, you know, as I come into my own sense of Jewish identity, learning about tzniut is very much something that is helping me sort of divide the lines of how I'm representing myself in sort of the Jewish spectrum, if you will. You know, maybe you guys have sort of heard about this idea that like the kind of kippah a man wears, like yarmulke kippah, like the kind of head covering a man wears, says a lot about sort of the background, the sect, the culture that he comes from. If you're wearing like a knitted, you know, yarmulke, whatever, and or like a big satin kippah, if it's white or black, if you wear a black hat, like even among the Hasidim, like the type of black hat you wear, there's actually like different shapes, and that says a whole thing about you. So there are a lot of sort of like coded ways that the Jewish community kind of gets to understand like where do you fall into the spectrum kind of thing. So like I think that's kind of, for better or for worse, a little bit more on the worse. I think it sort of divides Am Yisrael a little bit more than it brings us together. So not to say that I'm thinking about Tzniut so much from that perspective, but for me, you know, I'm kind of a mixed, complicated story. I'm actually, my community is a traditional conservative shul, but I'm personally more identified with Orthodox practice. So again, this is just me kind of like shaking out my Judaism and getting a sense of where I personally fall on the spectrum. And something I've noticed about Tzniut as I'm learning about it more is I definitely appreciate the ideas behind it, and I can definitely start to see that there's something very, very beautiful and important about sort of protecting ourselves and carrying ourselves in this world in a way that reminds us like we're Hashem's daughters, and there's something just beautiful and just something very admirable about women who sort of walk with that kind of pride, I guess. So so just kind of like a weird tangent, I guess, on like the cultural note, what it says, like what your dress says about you. For me, something I'm hyper aware of as I'm thinking about my sense of Jewish identity is that I don't want for a hot second to let go of my strong sense of Korean American identity. I'm a very, very proud Korean, and not that I like dress like a Korean person or anything. You know, Korean people now just basically dress like Westerners, except a little bit cooler or whatever. But no, I mean, I want to continue to like dress the way I've been dressing. Like I want my clothes to be who I am, and I don't think that, you know, growing into Tzniut and dressing more modestly has to mean that suddenly I look sort of Jewish in any particular way. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me, I really struggle with the idea that a lot of what Judaism brings culturally is something I can't connect to, that just doesn't resonate with me. For example, when you think about sort of like the stereotypical image of Tzniut, you think about, you know, like Haredi women, and there's definitely a certain look to that, and that may be very much, you know, that's great in their community, but to me, like, if I dress that way, like, I wouldn't feel like who I am. I wouldn't feel like my Korean American Jewish self. So I'm really trying to find and figure out ways that I can dress more modestly while still like looking like me. And, you know, I basically want to be able to, you know, see someone down the street that hasn't seen me in like a couple years or something, and for them not to be like, whoa, you're dressing differently, versus, oh, I like what you're wearing today, like, you know, that's cool, that like looks like something you would wear. So I'm trying to kind of blend myself into the idea of Tzniut, which I do think is possible, but it takes a little bit of like troubleshooting, and so I've been just trying to find clothes that kind of fit the bill with that, and sort of letting go of certain clothes that sort of no longer serve me. I was actually going to show a dress. Maybe I'll grab it a little bit later, but I was going through some of the clothes that I was like getting rid of, and some of them were just like, at this, I don't know if it's because I just turned 33, and I don't know if it's an age thing or what, but like I was just like, dang, I can't believe I used to wear that. So not that I ever dressed like particularly modestly, if anything, like being a good old Korean gal, I think I came from a little bit more of a modest mindset, if you will, just because Korean folks are pretty, like folks like literally Korean parents are pretty modest. And if you actually notice something peculiar I've noticed as I'm just like really like checking out what people are wearing, just to kind of get a sense of the environment, if you will, I'm noticing a lot that there's like a funny affinity between what like fob Korean girls or like fob Asians will wear and what Orthodox girls wear. Like you see the long skirts and then like the socks and the sneakers, and like it's a funny like weird comparison. But anyway, I digress. So my version, I guess I'll kind of go into it. I'll explain to you guys what my version of Tzniut has been to date, and what I'm kind of growing into, and the ways I'm sort of trying to adapt myself. But for me, the big thing is that it's all about context. So I was fortunate enough to go to Israel for my very first time this summer, which I'm just so sad now that I'm not there, but I'll be there again someday soon, I hope. But anyway, when I was in Jerusalem, for example, like I was like really covered up because I was hyper aware. I was so lucky. I found a hotel, like actually, it's like one of those Airbnb hotel hybrid things, but it was like right in the old city. So I was able to go to the hotel like several times a day, and it was amazing. But being in the old city, in the Jewish quarters, I just, I was very aware and mindful of the fact that I was around Haredi Jews that were a lot more observant, a lot more, especially observant of Tzniut than I was. So I was definitely mindful to like cover my feet, cover my, ankles, and just kind of like really just kind of cover myself up as best as I could. I would always have like, I guess I'll show you guys. I always had this, I love this wrap. It's just very like sheer, so it's great for actually like Jerusalem heat and all that, but I had this on all the time, and I would like cover myself all the way, and I was just very mindful because to me Tzniut is so much about being respectful and mindful of the opposite gender, so that there's no distractions, there's no sort of negative thoughts that you sort of invite yourself toward. And so yeah, when I was in Jerusalem, I was definitely a lot more covered up. And I would say, like, I guess, let's talk shul. Like, so for me, shul versus weekday, when I'm in shul, I personally like to have no open toes. That's something, I think it also kind of comes from my Korean background too. I remember like when we would do certain like ancestral ceremony kind of stuff that happens in Korean culture, we would always have to like put our socks on and like make sure that we're not barefoot. So like that's a thing that I'm pretty sensitive to. Even like I daven at home, for example, I make sure to have socks or shoes on, so I'm not barefoot. So yeah, no open toes. I'll actually wear like mule shoes where that kind of slip on and like the back of my heels will be showing. Like for whatever reason, I personally don't feel like that's immodest to show heels, but I definitely don't feel comfortable having open toes. Skirt length, I like to go like mid knee or below. Like I don't like to go above the knee, and certainly definitely not like up to the thighs, which I do see some people do. But yeah, I like to be kind of a little bit more on the conservative side on that note. Yet at the same time, I don't do stockings, I do bare legs. I don't personally, again, find that that's necessarily immodest, but if you're going to be a little bit more on the strictly observant side, definitely covering up with even like very opaque stockings is something like I know that the Hasidim really take a lot of care to do. And then in terms of tops, I like to be covering my elbows. This shirt I actually bought this for Tzniut wear a little bit, and this is a new shirt, and I did my nice bracha for my new clothes today. But anyway, so this one actually does go up to the elbow. Like this is what I would consider like weekday Tzniut wear. But if I'm in shul, I do like to kind of cover all the way down to my elbow. Again, just like less skin, the better, in my opinion. And then when it comes to sort of the neck and collar line, that's where I'm a little bit more on the less observant, less stringent side of things, where typically the most stringent observant side, you'll want to cover like all the way up to your full collarbone, so that your just your neck and up is showing. Personally, like I'm okay if this much skin is showing, so I'll show a little bit more collar area, but I do try to take care to wear high neck stuff as much as possible. But like if this much is showing, like I'm not going to sweat that. So yeah, that's like my like level of sort of Tzniut when it comes to going to shul. And also just in terms of the fit of clothing, I like to kind of describe it as like being an amorphous blob, which doesn't sound very charming, but in a good way. Like I just try not to sort of show too much shape. And again, it's all about being respectful and mindful of your fellow daveners to make sure that you're not going to cause any kind of distraction. And just kind of a note on that, like this is my little like on a soapbox pedestal situation, my PSA to all the abbas and imas of the world, because I just want to make a note about that. A lot of people misinterpret Tzniut and like these laws of modesty of like, oh, that's so sexist. It's like, you're just assuming that like everyone's thinking sexual thoughts all the time. Like we're, a lot more, advanced than that, and da-da-da. Like there's a lot of like steamy conversation when it comes to Tzniut, but look, at the end of the day, like here's a perfect example. When I am, in shul, I do my best to try to like focus and like cut out all the distractions, but you've all been there. It's not easy, and like you're gonna get distracted by people sometimes. So as much as I do my best, we don't have a mechitza here in the shul that I go to, but anyway, as much as I try to kind of keep myself focused, you know, sometimes, and this actually goes to other areas of tzniut with like touch. Like I have been seated behind couples that are a little bit touchy with each other, and it like makes me uncomfortable, and then it's distracting, and then the way that they're touching just kind of has this like very sensual nature about it, if you will. So that's very just not tzniut, and so that's a little distracting thing. But that actually wasn't my little PSA, that was like my second little PSA. Don't do that, please. But the other thing I wanted to mention is when I see young girls who are dressed like not very modestly, meaning really high like short skirts, very tight pants, like heels that are too big for them, like, and I'm talking about usually like sort of the awkward teenage girls who are trying to look all cute in front of the boys and all that stuff. I've been there, I get it, but when I see a girl walking around like that, like, it's hard because like, look, I am a 33-year-old heterosexual woman, and if I see a girl walking around like that, you know, not dressed very modestly, and she's walking into shul with her like her own like parents, I can't help but have like a thought in my head like, oh my gosh, that girl looks very sexual, like she does not look tzniut. And suddenly here I am, a heterosexual 33-year-old woman, having thoughts about sexualizing this like daughter, that, like, not in a, like a lustful way or anything, but I'm just like having these thoughts, like breaking it down and like being like, oh my gosh. And then like just imagine then what a straight middle-aged man, and like there are plenty of them in shul, like God forbid, like I don't even want to think about it, but like think about what goes in their minds. So just a little note to all the abbas and imas, like it really, you know, if I can like think like impure things, like just thinking like, oh my gosh, I can't help but think those things, like I don't even want to think about what those guys are thinking. So please, like, you know, when you're in shul, covering up, it's just super important. Again, not just for the, you know, respect of your like fellow daveners, your fellow congregants, but also just, you know, the reason I like to dress up for shul is, and especially on Shabbat, but even like just on a weekday going to shul, like it's just, you're presenting yourself to Hashem, like you're saying, here I am, Hashem, like I'm coming to like see you. And I think that's, you know, that's what makes it exciting to like wear your best when you go to Shabbat. And, you know, especially if you have new clothes and you wear them for Shabbat, like that's a beautiful feeling. So I really like to comport myself that way, and I like to carry myself proudly to shul and know like, here I am, Hashem, like I put on my best, like this is, you know, me presenting myself to you, and I'm here as like your beautiful daughter or son. And, you know, we should really carry ourselves with that mindset. So that's my little spiel on that. But speaking of sons, so again, like tzniut does apply to both men and women, and the reason why we talk about it so much more with women, I mean, like loads of reasons, but aside from like the speech and behavior part, the dressing, like Baruch Hashem that men don't like dress scandalously, like just culturally, socially, like I can't even, it's like, it actually just makes me like giggle thinking about what like a scandalous male outfit would look like. Not to put like crazy impure thoughts in your head or anything, but we're pretty lucky that that's not really a thing. But like, let's be real, like I'll, like if I'm like walking around the street and I see like a guy like running around without his shirt off and he's like, you know, whatever, like that's distracting. Like thank goodness like that is not sort of a fashion like style that comes up all the time, but you guys can kind of get the idea, like it does apply to both sides. So it's about sort of making sure that you're helping your fellow brothers and sisters guard their eyes and be able to you know, not have these sort of impure thoughts, which are just not very helpful to us trying to observe the other areas of tzniut, if you catch my drift. So anyway, that's just kind of a little side note that I wanted to mention. And also, like, I don't know, I guess like when it comes down to what tzniut means for everybody, everyone has their own version. Like I said, like my version of tzniut, like a Haredi woman would be like appalled to not wear stockings, appalled to show this amount of neckline, maybe appalled that I'm like showing my elbows in this video, like, you know. And even thinking about this, like my YouTube intro video has me, I'm actually in like Tel Aviv in one of the scenes or whatever, and you know, I'm like in a tank top. So like, you know, there's just various levels, and the reason that is, you know, like halacha is so strict, like there, you know, there's there's like a way to do everything in Judaism, but when it comes to tzniut, even the most observant women will relent and admit like this is a very personal decision, and the reason is because it's literally how we are representing ourselves in the world. So you can't tell somebody like this is how you're going to like be who you are. So, you know, I just want to kind of put that out there. Like if you think that, sorry, lost my battery there, but I was just saying, if you think that, you know, tzniut for you means wearing skirts all the time, then great. If you feel like that just means, you know, not wearing like tiny, like spaghetti strap whatever dresses, then awesome. Like it really does depend on your level of like what's comfortable to you, but the most important thing is that you really feel like you are in your own clothes and you are in your own skin. So yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, that's been a huge theme for me. Like I want to make sure that my clothes look and feel like me. I don't want people to just, you know, think I'm wearing some like Jewish uniform or whatever. Like again, I mentioned it before, I really think that that's not a helpful thing. I completely understand why there's sort of like uniforms, if you will, of Judaism, certain looks and dress codes of different sects of Judaism, but you know, there's a lot of historical reasons for that, and you know, I thank God for that because it really did help to sort of keep the heritage alive for quite some difficult periods in our history. But at the same time, I think that we're, you know, at a point where we need to sort of bring Israel together more so than divide. And I just personally have a problem with some of these sort of ways of dress actually sort of dividing and sort of classifying us a little too much. So anyway, I'm going to kind of show you guys a few different things that I've gotten that I've kind of added to my closet that for me feel very much like who I am, so that I can still be my Korean American Jewish self and still be able to observe the laws of modesty as best as I can. So like I mentioned, this is actually a new shirt I got, and I don't know if you can really, it's hard to sort of see, but what I like about it is that it's got like a tied front. I'm really into like shirts that tie in the front. I just like that style a lot, but I also like it because it feels cute, because you kind of get that like cropped look, but at the same time like you're fully covered up. So I'm really into this shirt. I got it for pretty cheaply on Amazon. I'm also wearing a new skirt, which is also kind of like this athletic looking, more yeah, it's got like a drawstring thing, so you guys can see I'm like fully covered up, and yet I don't know, it just feels very like casual and very much like my style. So I'm really into that. It's something new I've gotten. I showed you guys this before. This is like what I would call like a very typical Shabbat outfit. So like I mentioned, like this is a little bit lower on the neckline, like it'll go up, it's like up to here actually, but you can see like I'll show a little more neck than someone more stringent would. But I just love this wrap, which again is very sheer but at the same time like fully covers. And so this is what I mean by kind of like amorphous blob. It's just like a big maxi dress, and you feel just kind of like very light and flowy in it. So I love like kind of flowy stuff like this. This is like one of my more favorite like Shabbat outfits. Like it's a little more casual, so it might be something I wear on like an Erev Shabbat, not necessarily to like, no, I mean I would wear this as shul on a Saturday. It's a little more casual, but like I'll have this kind of denim top, which I would also kind of tie up in the front like this. And then I just love this skirt. This is like my favorite, yeah, this is my favorite skirt that I have right now. It's black, and it just kind of has this like puffiness, and it's a little bit asymmetrical, so I just love the way it feels. And it has pockets, which is amazing. Even though I don't carry anything on Shabbat, I like to put my hands in my pockets, so it feels nice, and I really love this outfit so much. And then I guess I'll put these over here. And then you'll see there's like a theme. Black is not like the Jewish uniform. I know that there's like a thing with you know, black hat community, and like, you know, there definitely is a theme of wearing sort of like not bright, like noticeable popping colors, and that definitely is sort of like an aspect of tzniut for some people. But I actually personally just happen to love wearing black, and like black is my favorite color. I know it's not really color, but I like it, so that's why I have it. This is actually this is like my favorite skirt. I just don't wear it all the time, but it's basically, I wore this to a wedding like a few years ago, but now I just wear it to shul sometimes, and you'll see it's just like a big kind of like prom looking skirt, and it also has a big like things in the back, so you can kind of tie this pretty little bow in the back. And I wore this, the last time I wore this was for, I think, like the first day of Simchat Torah this year, and I don't know, I feel like a old-fashioned like princess, or like this kind of reminds me of like the way I would feel in like a hanbok and like a Korean dress. So I just really like this one a lot. I know it's a little bit on the dressy side just for like a regular shul day, but I don't really care. I really like it, and it makes me feel pretty, so I like to wear that. And then I have like all different formats of just like long black dress. So like I just have a bunch of black dresses, which are just the easiest thing to pop on real easily. And then I have just a lot of like long sweater kind of things. Like this is a sweater that goes like all the way down to like way past my knees, so it's just a nice long cover up. And then I got some new skirts. This is like, I love this skirt, which is just kind of this big long gray skirt. But what's really cute about it is that it has like this tie in the front, so you kind of get this cute little tied look. And I just have like a short sweater that I would wear with that. I haven't worn that yet. It's another one of my newer clothes that I wanted to try. And then another new outfit I got is this, so this sweater is just kind of like a crop sweater. I would wear, I think I have it under here, I would wear like a black tank top underneath it so that like my stomach or anything doesn't show. But I definitely think that wearing cropped clothes like just kind of looks cuter, because you still kind of get that like modern look, but at the same time, as long as you're wearing like, you know, like a tank top or something underneath it, it still will be Tzniut friendly. So I really like this new sweater. And then I plan to wear it with this new skirt I also got, which I love. It's like this sort of like chiffon-y material, and all the way down to the floor. It is sheer, so I think it's a little too sheer, so I'll have to wear, well, this is like one layer, there's 2 layers, but it is still sheer, so I am going to wear this with some like leggings underneath. But it's just, again, very like flowy and lovely, so it makes me feel elegant. And I haven't worn it yet, but when I tried it on, it makes me feel very elegant. And yeah, so I really like to incorporate skirts. So here's the thing, like when you're dressing with Tzniut in mind, you don't have to wear skirts. It's not about skirts, and it's not about like wearing clothes that are not part of your gender. I personally don't buy that, especially because nowadays, like, it's just as normal. It's not like we're living in the 1600s where it'd be like scandalous shock to see a woman in like galoshes or whatever. I think that's what they used to call them, but like in like pants, like that's like totally normal now. So it's totally fine to wear pants. It's more about like the fit. And so here's where I actually personally struggle, where like, again, let's just say I'm not yet mature enough to have appreciated this level of observance. Tight jeans, like I love my Levi's, they're like kind of skin tight, so I'm still wearing them. And something I might do is like wear kind of like a longer shirt like this, where basically my lower regions, if you will, would be covered up by like a long shirt, while I can still wear my tight jeans, which I love and feel very comfortable in. So at least for this stage, that's kind of like where I've gotten to in terms of how I might wear my jeans. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm like staying for now, but we'll see, you know, where I get to. And then leggings, I mean, I've let go of that. Like I'll wear them at home, and I'll wear them if I were going to the gym, which I don't anymore. But if I were going to the gym, I would wear leggings and be fine with that. But I have to say, like, something I've become a lot more sensitive toward, as I'm just noticing with sort of Tzniut in mind how women dress, is like leggings and tights. Like, dang, they're pretty like I've seen girls walking around where it's like you can pretty much basically know exactly what they look like without those leggings on. So I've kind of left those behind. I definitely don't personally feel like that kind of vibes with like my sense of Tzniut anymore. So that does make me really sad, because that was like my uniform to like wear like tights and leggings, just like a white tee or something like that was awesome. So I definitely miss that. But I think, like, if, you know, again, it depends on how I would cover the rest. Like, if I would wear leggings with, like, a long t-shirt and then, like, a big long, this is, like, my Nike like long sweater. So like it kind of depends on how you mix it up. So I might not fully let go of those all yet. So I'm still kind of like trying to work out some of these things. But definitely like tight dresses I definitely miss. Like there are definitely certain dresses, like actually this one, it's not even that tight. It's like a super dry dress. It doesn't look tight at all right now, but like on my body, it like hugs my body, and like the reason I liked wearing this is because I thought my butt looks good in it, right? But like I think that kind of says it all. Like probably not Tzniut friendly. So again, I'm keeping this because I might wear this with something like draped over me, or maybe I would like lose a little weight and it's not so like form-fitting. So I'm still just trying to kind of like play around with the levels of what Tzniut is for me and my wardrobe, but I really am trying to keep in mind, like, I want to feel like me all the way through, so it depends on what's comfortable for you. It's just this idea that we're really kind of keeping in mind like the spirit of Tzniut, and I think that's what really matters at the end of the day. Like you will grow into different levels of observance throughout your whole life, you know, Tzniut or any other area of halacha. Like it's all about growing into your levels. So I just wanted to share this with you guys and hopefully you got something out of it. I would love to know what you think about Tzniut. Maybe you're for it, against it, maybe you're kind of like challenged by it, like whatever it is, like definitely drop it in the comments, because I'm very curious to see what other people sort of think and feel about Tzniut and sort of what your level of observance is. It's a topic I just love chatting with people about, so definitely do that. And please hit the like and subscribe button. I'm going to be dropping more videos, so I would love for you guys to talk about more stuff with me. And Shalom Aleichem. I'm so glad you guys were able to stick with me, and I will see you later.
Wow, yeah, swear to God I'm with it. I don't see nobody in my lane, it's quite go get it like